Welcome to the Entree Pastors Podcast on YouTube. This is a show that helps pastors think, act, and thrive as prosperous entrepreneurs. Well, hello there, and welcome to the Entree Pastors Podcast on YouTube. My name is Jon Sanders. I'm one of the hosts of the show, and in just a moment, you'll be introduced to my other co-host, Les Hughes, as we have a really powerful conversation around this topic of how do you turn your wound into a superpower. I have a really impactful story that I'm going to share in this week's episode that not only we're going to share a story from one of our friends, we're going to share how that deeply opened my eyes to something, a part of my own story that I never really realized before. How from a very young age, there were some things working in my life to maybe derail or put a narrative in my mind around the very thing that God was going to use in my life and in my ministry. How we can turn what intended to be a wound into what ultimately becomes a superpower. I think this has a lot of implications, not only in our ministry life, but also in business as we're launching entrepreneurial businesses. So we're confident that this conversation will be helpful and impactful for many of you. We're grateful to have you joining us. Without any further ado, check out the show. Here we go. Well, guys, this is episode number 73, and we have kind of a unique title and kind of a unique direction I want to go with this episode. The title is Turn Your Wound into Your Superpower. What do we mean by that? Turn your wound into your superpower. Well, there's a little bit of a backstory, and then I'm going to tell you a little bit longer backstory, and then we're going to get some commentary from Les on all of it. So here's the backstory. Les, a while ago, you and I met a guy. Well, actually, I think it was in the very first challenge we did. We met an awesome dude, one of our people. His name is Scott Cramer. He's a pastor in Central Illinois, and he wrote a book. He's a great writer, by the way. When he was talking about the book that he wrote, and then is the title of his book. Never Stop Sharing Stories is the subtitle. So it's a book where he's telling stories. He's a great storyteller. He's a great writer. And you and I both bought his book, and I listened to it. I did the audiobook version of it. But he shared among many other great stories, which, by the way, we're going to get him as a guest. I think we actually have him booked to be a guest on the show. So you'll be hearing from him in the weeks ahead. But he shared a story that really resonated with me, and it brought some light to a story of my own that I've never seen packaged in the way that he talked about it. And so if it's cool, I'm going to tell his story real briefly, but then share my story in a little more detail. Anything else you want to add to that setup there, Les?
Well, this resonates so much with tons of people that I've spoken with, and I know you have too, that are in ministry. And, life is about the journey. It's not about reaching the destination. It's about what happens on the journey along the way. And when I was at a Christian university in the Christian Studies department, we had church-related vocational students, and we would talk to them early in the semester and then find out their stories. And we learned that the vast majority of them, almost all, I would say, had something in their story where there was a pain point or something traumatic that had happened to them or somebody that was very, very close to them. And that was a part of what God used to really call them or set them apart for church-related ministry. And so a colleague of mine had a saying where he said, we pastor from our pain. We minister from our pain. And that's certainly true in Scott's story. And I'm looking forward to you sharing about part of yours as well.
Yeah, so I won't go deep into Scott's story, the story he writes about in his book, but I'm going to share kind of the big idea of the line that really jumped out at me. But his story revolved around an event that happened as he was serving, growing up in the church, and I think he was part of a youth Sunday. When we have him on the show, maybe we'll ask him to tell it in more detail, or you can just go buy his book and read it yourself. But where there was kind of an embarrassing moment that happened that really caused him to take a step back, and the message he took away from that is, oh, this area of ministry or service is not for me. Like I'm not good at this. Here was the point that he said, and this is what really jumped off the page at me, even though I was listening to it in an audiobook. It was that basically the enemy will often attack us in the very area of our calling, the very area of the thing that God wants to use us for or to do in us and through us, a lot of times the enemy will attack us in that very place and kind of create a narrative around that is the exact opposite of God's plan and purpose for our life. And when I was listening to that story, Les, it made me think back to something similar in my life. Now, in the title, I'm using the word wound, turn your wound into a superpower. I wouldn't necessarily say that this was a wound for me. That might be too strong of a word, but I think there's value in this story. So here it is. Years ago, when I was in middle school, I don't know why and how they do these things, but I remember you'd have to like sit, go into a room and get evaluated in these different areas. And one of them was around the area of speech. And there was like a speech therapist in the school or whatever. And looking back now, I'm like, she was probably just justifying her position for being there. But I got selected as someone who had something wrong with my voice. And like there was something about the quality of my voice that she did not like and deemed this needs work and needs correction. And here's all I knew at the time is that I got pulled out of gym class when everyone else is in there playing dodgeball and having fun. And for a guy that's wound up like me and is competitive, that was why I went to school. I did not go to learn. I went to play dodgeball and eat lunch. And all the normal kids were off playing dodgeball. Jon got pulled in for an extended season into this speech room to have speech therapy. And I'm telling you, Les, I didn't have anything wrong with my voice then, and I don't think what we did helped in any way. Like I saw no measurable difference. As I'm hearing myself tell the story, I'm like, well, maybe God was fixing my voice so that it would be ready. But that's not what happened, Les. Here's what happened. I took away the message from that at a young age that Jon doesn't have a good voice. And so when I went into pastoral ministry, and even before that, like when I would hear my voice, was it ever weird for you the first time you heard yourself on a
Absolutely
video? Yeah, I think it's pretty common for people because when you hear, you're like, do I really sound like that? But for me, there was almost more of a message around that that's like, see, that's what's wrong with your voice. Like, see, you don't have a good voice. And so it was really weird for me. I'm not saying that was like a big hang up for me in my life, but it was very weird for me many years later, as I'm now in a role where I recognize God has given me a voice to be used for his glory. Like I would tell you, if you were to say, what's your big why, Jon? Why are you here? What's your big purpose? I've come to recognize that God has put me here to use my voice as a way to encourage, inspire, and motivate other people to embrace life. And that life is kind of a dual meaning. It's certainly embracing all of this physical world, but it's also embracing life, the person, as in life in Jesus Christ. And so I recognize that God has largely put me here to use my voice. And yet when I read that story of Scott's, I'm like, man, I can look back and see how the enemy was attacking me at that very point of the thing that God had gifted me with, the thing that in some ways you may call my superpower. Years later, I'm in a role where I'm preaching, I'm podcasting, I'm on video a lot in different arenas. And I have for years now, in the more recent adult years of my life, I've had so many people, Les, compliment me on, wow, you have such a great voice for what you do. And it literally just happened this past Sunday, not at church, in a different setting. I was out with my daughter and in public, and someone was like, wow, you have a voice for radio. And maybe they said I had a face for radio. I can't remember. But anyway, no, but it's like for the longest time, I kind of would downplay that and go, no, I don't have a good voice. There's something wrong with my voice. And all the while, it was the very thing that God was primarily going to use for his purposes and for serving others with my life and through my life. So again, it's just a little anecdotal story. What I don't want you to hear in it is Jon's amazing story. I really want you to filter that through your own story and your own lens and say, can you see yourself in that? Has there been something in your world, Pastor, that maybe now God is actually tapping you on the shoulder to go out in the marketplace and launch something, and it might very well be around the very thing that the enemy attacked you in years ago and said, that's not for you. You're no good at that. That's not something you should engage in. What if he attacked you in the very area that God wanted to use you? So that's my big story, Les. What are your thoughts? Push back, comments?
No, there are two of them primarily. One is that our adversary is a liar, John.
Yeah.
He's just a liar. And he wants to embarrass and humiliate God because he's been defeated already. And he'll lie to you. And you need to listen to the voice of truth, or voices of truth, but especially the voice of truth, because he's a liar. And the other thing is that, it's back to, if you look at the story of Joseph in the Old Testament, what those brothers intended for evil, God used it for good. And we don't have to get into all of the whys and wherefores and reasons behind everything. But the fact is that, Jesus said all things are possible with God. And it's a real funny thing. I know you're a Greek scholar, so you probably
Yeah,
know that
absolutely.
word all doesn't mean most,
Right.
I mean, it's pretty simple. It means all, and all things are possible with God. And I don't have a story like or exactly like yours, but I was just, for me personally, I had a major stuttering problem when I was a young teen, like 12, 13 years old. And we won't go into all the reasons why that probably was, but it bothered me and I was real self-conscious about it.
Yeah.
And the fact that the Lord has used me now and, my voice in a different sort of way is amazing to me, just because I know where I came from. So Satan's a liar. All things are possible with God. That's what comes to my mind.
Yeah, and for me personally, I appreciate you sharing that, Les. For me personally, as I'm still on the journey, as we all are, right? Like, you and I don't create this content from a place of having arrived and telling everyone exactly how they can arrive. I mean, we're guides on the journey. We're still discovering things and figuring stuff out for ourselves as we go. That's kind of another application that hit me as I was listening to Scott share that story, is that I probably need to spend the majority of my time in that very place of using my voice and speaking. So it doesn't mean I can't do anything that doesn't involve a microphone and a platform, whether it's a physical stage or a podcast or whatever. But that's really where God has gifted me. And it's the very thing the enemy came along and tried to derail with this narrative of, no, don't use your voice. Your voice is not good. So again, somewhere in there, there's probably some value. I use that very story, by the way, in a coaching conversation recently with another guy. He's not a pastor, in a different arena. But man, that was a powerful moment for him too, to recognize how some of the childhood trauma that he's been through and the message that he took away from that is exactly that. It's the enemy trying to stifle the very thing that God put him on this planet to do. So that ties in kind of with what you said earlier, Les, about, pastoring from our pain. And again, it's not that everything we do has to flow out of a wound or a place of pain, but I think the message is, first of all, don't believe every message you've heard, right? Like you said, the enemy's a liar. And secondly, what if God actually wanted to use you in that very arena or down that road that you felt this wound or this attack in? So hopefully that's an encouragement to somebody.
Yeah. And here's something else. When God does a work in your life, man, that place becomes very strong and galvanized in many ways, because you go through so much to get there. And it's not like you're completely invulnerable there. It's just that when God does a work there and you gain some confidence when he speaks into your life, then that place is fortified and reinforced. Like, we have a good friend, he's in our community, and he told me one time about his grandfather, who was a welder and a pretty good storyteller as well. And so they had a really good relationship. And this young man would be with his grandfather, and his grandfather would weld two pieces of steel together that had been broken. And that place that it's welded leaves a whelp, you know.
Mm.
There's a bullet. You can see where it's welded. But he said his grandfather would point to that place and he'd say, "You see that place right there that was broken, that I've welded?" He said, "That now is the strongest place on this entire frame," or whatever it was. And he'd say, "It may break somewhere else, but it'll never break there again."
That's good.
Yeah.
Good stuff. Well, let that be an encouragement to you. I don't know where that applies to you, Pastor, whether it's something in your ministry life or, again, maybe in the area of a business that you're wanting to start that you've been hesitant because someone told you that was off limits for you, or that's not your space, or you're no good in that area. So hopefully that's a word of encouragement. A little bit different content than we normally create. Les, one other thing before we wrap up, this may end up being just a little bit shorter of an episode this week, but it's okay. No one ever's mad if they get out of church early, right? So
That's true.
one other thing we wanted to cover real quick, we are closing in on the month of February. In the month of February 2023, you and I are launching our Entree Pastors Business Launch Academy. It's going to be a 4-month journey walking alongside a small group of pastors and kingdom-minded people who have an idea for a business that they want to launch. And they are just looking for some of the resources, the encouragement, the support along the way to do that. And we're getting ready to kick our very first one of those off here, February 20th. So I figured maybe you and I could take just a couple minutes and kind of talk about the highlights of that, and then tell people about, where they can go to take a step in that direction if they want to learn more about that. So we've never done this before. What's going through your mind as we prepare for this 4-month journey to take with some in our community?
Well, I'm really excited about it. And for everybody that wants to go there and look at these details, the web address is entrepastors.com/next. So you go to that and you can find out more details about everything that Jon and I are going to talk about. But here's the truth of the thing, Jon. There's no quick fix, to the things that we talk about and the journeys that we help people on. It's not a get rich quick scheme. In fact, when you hear something like that, That's exactly what it is. It's a scheme, but there is a framework and a system that we've developed ourselves. We've implemented it ourselves, and now we're helping others on this journey and still learning a lot. One of the things we've learned is that the deeper we can go with people over a little bit more of an extended period of time, the more results we're probably going to get. There's accountability there. We're learning along the way. And so this is going to be something that I'm really excited about. I know you are too. We've put together a good framework. It's going to be a much deeper dive with those who are interested in something like that. And we'll kick it off in February.
Yeah. And can I vent for a minute, Les? Is it okay if I just vent and complain?
Feel free, Jon. This is a safe place for you.
All right. I'm not complaining. I'm venting.
Yes.
One of the things that drives me nuts in the space that you and I are in, we coach people, we encourage people, we're cheerleaders, we're shining a light, trying to show a way, trying to illuminate the path for people to move down. And our message resonates with people, Les. It's not bragging if it's true. Like, we have pastors all the time reaching out, grateful for our content, grateful for the inspiration, and tell us all the time, like, this is adding value. Thank you. Here's what drives me nuts is when you see someone with so much potential and they desire to be in a better place, they desire to level up. And then when it comes to the point of taking action, which in many cases is going to require something of them. In this case, we're talking a financial investment to pay the price, to get in that arena, to be in that place where you've got coaching and support and accountability and people walking beside you. They hold off and they step back and they find a reason to go, not right now. And I'm not directing that at any one person. You and I have heard these stories again and again and again. It's frustrating to see because I feel those same voices that rise up and go, ooh, maybe wait. How about next year? Do it at another time. Wait till there's more money. Wait. And what happens is often people just continue to sit and spin their wheels. And it's frustrating. It frustrates the mess out of me to see that. So I hope this lands with somebody to say, today is your day. Stop wasting time. Stop making excuses. Stop just listening to podcasts and actually do something with what you're hearing. entrepastors.com/next. And by the way, all you're signing up for there is a 60-minute conversation with yours truly, where we'll unpack this together. We'll kind of find out where you are and what your dream and goals are, and then we'll see if this is even a good fit for you. We may come to the end of that conversation and go, hey, this probably isn't the right time for you. This probably isn't the right next step. But for others, that's exactly what we're going to find out is, let's go. We can help you. In 4 months from now, we can have this business up and off the ground. let's make it happen. So anyway, my rant is over. We can take an offering now, Les, but
And it may not be a good fit. And if people have been listening to us for a while, hopefully they've heard that honesty from us, and we will tell you the truth. You may not like it, or you may like it, and you may disagree, but we're going to tell you the truth. Our goal is that it's win-win, and we want it to be a win for you. We certainly want it to be a win for us but here's the truth. You absolutely, if you expect to get different results by taking the same actions that you've been taking, that's just not going to happen. I mean, it's just not going to happen. And the way to get different results is to take different actions, not only with this, with just about anything. And you know what, when you take actions, it might not lead to the results that you want. Guess what? They might be better, but I guarantee you that you'll learn something from it. So there is no fail here. The only fail is failing to take some action when you want some different results.
Yeah, that's the frustrating part, because you're right. Movement is movement, and movement brings clarity. Action brings clarity. And so, it may not get you exactly where you're wanting to go, but it brings that into further view. It brings it into more clarity. And, now I know what my next step is. But if you just keep sitting and doing nothing and, someday I'd like to this or that, you're going to be sitting there a while. And so I know this sounds like I'm frustrated. It's because I am a little frustrated. I'm frustrated seeing pastors who I care deeply about with so much potential and a desire to be in a better place. And it's like, it's so possible. We can help you get there, but I can't make you take the step of action. So this is me just sitting back, being a cheerleader, a frustrated cheerleader in some cases, going, come on, let's go. So take that as your kick in the pants for whoever needs that kick in the pants, and let's go. Let's make 2023 one of the best years of your life. Let's launch this business. Let's thrive in ministry and the marketplace. That's what we're here to help you do. So well, hey, thanks for watching this episode of the Entre Pastors Podcast. Make sure you hit that subscribe button so you can be notified every time we release a new episode. If you'd like to get connected to other pastors who are learning to think, act, and thrive as prosperous entrepreneurs, then we invite you to check us out on Facebook. Just search for the Entre Pastors Connect group, answer a few of our simple questions there, and we'd love to include you in the conversations. And if you're really ready to go to the next level, then we invite you to join our Entre Pastors membership community. When you become a monthly subscriber, you will receive access to courses, exclusive community, and coaching that will help you along in your own Entre Pastors journey. If there's anything else we can do to serve you, please visit us at entrepastors.com, and we will do our best to serve you there. God bless everybody. See you soon.